All right, 201. I think we can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Scott Thrower. I'm Vice President of Sales here at A-LIGN. Welcome to our monthly compliance corner. This is where we invite our clients, industry experts to discuss how security impacts their day-to-day business, how they proactively or reactively plan around the security concerns that are present in the market. Today, I'm joined, we have a special guest. He's a vendor to A-LIGN and also a client of our services. And I'm very thankful to welcome Chris Castaldo, Crossbeam's Chief Information Security Officer.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
My pleasure. So I wanted to cover a lot of items today, but where I wanted to start was why did you choose the assessment portfolio you have? You have quite an extensive portfolio of assessments that you perform, and why those that you did?
Yeah, so Crossbeam, just to kind of set the stage so people know kind of the data, the industry we work in, our types of customers. Obviously, A-LIGN is one of our customers, but we are a B2B SaaS company hosted in the cloud. Company's fully built in the cloud. And we sell obviously to other businesses and go through your standard procurement cycles, talking to privacy teams, security teams. And if there's anyone on this webinar that sells to other businesses, I'm sure they know the just litany of questions they get from security people, privacy, legal. So one of the ways we address those and get those answers to those folks quickly is through our audits. SOC 2 was already happening prior to me joining, so it was nice to kind of come into that already having that type of culture. And then over the years in my time here, we've added two other standards and frameworks, ISO 27001 and ISO 27701, the data privacy component. I know we'll get into it. I don't want to spoil too many things, but a lot of it is, enabling sales, showing and demonstrating our level of security and privacy to our customers. And then also, making sure we're governing what we put in place, right? We've got a second set of eyes external to the business that can, help us ensure that we are indeed doing what we said we would do.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the next question of what is driving? Is it internal? Is it external? You mentioned the barrage of requests from your client base and also enabling the sales team and probably the barrage of requests from them as well of, hey, are we 27701? What is that? Can I have a copy of the certificate? What are some of those departments internally or externally that are driving these?
Yeah, really, a lot of the companies I've been at are B2B companies. So one of the things I really hone in on when I join an organization is what are the challenges the sales team, revenue team, whatever you might call it in your organization, the folks actually selling your product, what are the challenges they're facing when selling into other companies, right? Are there, a standard set of questions they're constantly getting from customers on the security side, on the privacy side? That, quickly helps me key in on where I can enable them, right? And get them either, a set of talk tracks that they can use to, talk about our security at a high level. If there are things that are covered in our audit, which, there's not much that's not covered in our SOC 2 and our ISO. It pretty much covers everything we're typically asked about. And the benefit of 27701 gets us a lot of great answers to questions around GDPR. Obviously, it is not a GDPR certification, but there is quite a bit of overlap, right? They're both data privacy centric frameworks and one being a law. So that's really the first key is what are our customers asking? How can I enable the sales team? And then what are our internal stakeholders? Is the board asking questions? Are other stakeholders within the business asking questions about our security? Are they concerned about something like, hey, I just heard about this data breach at this other company. Is that something that could affect us, right? Those are all factors that go into building out that compliance program and how we approach bringing in those external auditors.
No, I love hearing the way you triaged it of, hey, what challenges are you facing? What's consistent? What is the board saying? What is the fear in the market from breach? The next question kind of you alluded to as well of the overlaps between the standards and going from SOC 2 and layering in the ISO standards and multiple variants of the ISO. And my question here is, did this layering and did completing one and then the other, did it make the entire program more manageable? Did it make your foundation stronger? What was that like?
So from a manageability standpoint, that was actually one of the reasons we chose A-LIGN, because you're able to do SOC 2 and ISO. So we're a startup, we're a really small team. I'm the one that actually runs the audit. I'm collecting the evidence and all that stuff. So from a tactical standpoint, it was really critical. We were able to find and work with an auditor that was going to reduce my time, right? My time spent in the audit, pulling evidence, that type of stuff. So things like Ascend and being able to use like a really clean, neat, tidy platform to provide that evidence, but also get credit for both, right? So we do all of our audits at the same time. So SOC 2 and ISO each year in March. What I didn't want to do is do two independent separate audits where I'm doubling the work, I'm doubling the effort, I'm doubling my time that is spent, going through the audit with the auditors. So that was really, really important, very, very high on my list that we found a firm that would meet both of those needs. Because then, it's very easy. Like, okay, you're doing privileged access management, right? Both SOC 2 and ISO cover something around that. A little different language in the controls, but the evidence is still the same at the end of the day. So yeah, that was really important to find an auditor that could solve that for us.
I love hearing you say that. That really is kind of the ethos of our business and what drives the services that we offer to the market so that we can be that one-stop shop and really satisfy, whether it's access controls written for SOC or ISO or any variant, that we can satisfy those control requirements. We're going to switch gears here, and coming from the last topic of what drove, we've got a representation here of both internal factors, external factors, regulatory factors that drive where our customers are performing audits. The highest here on the right side, you see the 24% being regulatory requirements, or what I'll call, client requirements, where they're contractually obligating you to perform something, or there's a written regulation, state, federal, or global, that's requiring you to perform something. And then on the left side, 14% coming from board or executive suite, and what I'll call that internal push that you described. The sales team driving, hey, I need this, or I need this to get over onboarding or vendor procurement for this deal. Does this group of, whether it be building trust or regulation, does this represent what you were feeling at your business, and how did that impact your vendor selection or auditor selection?
Yeah, I'd say this is pretty in line with Crossbeam and a lot of the previous companies I've been at. Really, the number one driver is on the regulation side, both like laws, set forth from a state, a country, the EU, and regulations and complying with the contracts we have in place. At Crossbeam, it's a little more customer focused, right? What those customers are asking for us to commit to in those terms. So, general language, if anyone on the webinars, read contractual language for SaaS companies. There's usually something vague of like, will maintain some type of certification or audit similar to or like SOC 2, ISO, and kind of lists out different frameworks and standards. That's definitely the number one driving force for us. I've been in some organizations where prior to me joining, there was an event that occurred. So it was like really pushed heavily from the board to have, more compliance, more checks and balances in place versus just, let's apply security best practices. I really disagree sometimes with you see on LinkedIn people posting saying, compliance is not security, that type of, narrative. And I think they go hand in hand, really, like kind of both are complementary to each other. I think you need both to have a really strong cybersecurity program, using the kind of, stereotypical, what's if it's not measured, right, type thing. Because if you're not looking at that stuff, right, you can implement best practices all day, but if you're not going back and checking some way, whether it's some type of posture management tool, a third-party auditor, I think you really need that to have a mature cybersecurity program and one that's continually improving to, steal from ISO's controls, right? Continuous improvement is something they want to see. I think we all agree. I'll speak, broadly in cybersecurity. I think we all agree, like, there's no like end, right? It's just a continuous process in security, just like your HR team is never done. Right, your legal team is never done with their work, right? It's continuous risk management that we're applying in the business. So, yeah, I'd say those are kind of the two areas, main driving forces I've experienced in my career so far.
Yeah, you're spot on, and there is no end. And the LinkedIn commentary of compliance is not security goes hand in hand with that. It's one of the pieces of a foundation and a mature program. And my last question here is about that mature program. And were the audits that you selected, was that more of a proactive, I'm getting ahead of, I think, where this business needs to be, or reactive, or a mix? And maybe even outside of Crossbeam at your previous firms, were they always proactive security approaches? And is that really signify a mature program where you are kind of 2 steps ahead of where the business might need to be?
I'd say at Crossbeam, definitely proactive for the ISO side. As we, say 2-3 years ago, began expanding into EMEA, I immediately knew we would start getting more and more questions around privacy, GDPR, how do we comply to it? There's a lot of misunderstanding on like how GDPR applies to business data, and it's more for the individual, not business data. So I want to make sure, as we're pushing into a totally new market, that our teams are prepared to answer the exact questions I know we're going to get from having worked at companies that sold into EMEA pretty heavily. I heard a lot of the same questions over and over again. So I want to make sure we were prepared, again, with a talk track, but also something to back that talk track up. Right? Like, you can say whatever you want on a sales call, but at the end of the day, security, legal teams want to see evidence around that. Yeah, you can say you encrypt everything, but like show me that you're actually doing that, right? And that's really where 27701 came in. And obviously, 701 is an add-on to 27001, so we had to do that anyways to get 701. So yeah, that was definitely getting ahead of that stuff. So we're pretty much ready, prepared. SOC 2, obviously, a little more accepted in the U.S. Than ISO versus EMEA, right? So yeah, that was definitely to get out ahead. Other companies I've been at, things like NIST 800-171. Again, that was doing that to be able to sell into the government. And then you've got things like FedRAMP if you're going to get really, really serious. So I've been in both places where it was proactive and reactive. I think that's all security teams, right? Like we can't be totally proactive 100% of the time.
No, and everything you're talking about is just the definition of a mature security program where you have that, hey, let's take the business to this EMEA market. What are we concerned with? Is GDPR the primary concern? Are we overly concerned with this? Is it more of a consumer issue and not a business issue? What's the right level of concern? And then you talk about the difference between 171 and FedRAMP, a big swing in, how much time and energy you're going to put into this and what is the return on that, what is the revenue drive, and how much effort is behind it. So love hearing that insight. Go to the next slide here. This is a trophy case for you. This really is. This is a virtual trophy case. I just wanted to put this up there and have you walk us through some of your trophies and what are the benefits of each and what were the milestones and maybe what were the tough parts of each, and did finishing one make the next one easier?
Yeah, I would say SOC 2 certainly set us up to be prepared for ISO. Having been through a first time ISO certification 4 times now, I knew like a gap assessment was going to be really critical. Just, looking at the time constraints, right? If you're familiar with, major, minor nonconformities, you've got timelines you've got to fit into. So I knew it was going to be important to let's do a gap assessment. Let's just see where we might need to invest. Probably no surprise to most people is like documentation, policy, getting everything lined up with what ISO is looking for. So I'd say that was a bulk of our work. There was some technical engineering work that had to go into meeting some of the ISO statement of applicability controls, right, on the engineering side, but nothing like totally out of the ordinary. Maybe a couple policies that need to be created from scratch, because that's one of the things is, yeah, you're doing the control, right, you're doing the work, but one of the things in ISO, they want to see it documented, right? So a little heavier push on the documentation side. SOC 2 looks for some of that, but I'd say not as strict as ISO. So I'd definitely say, yeah, SOC 2 prepared us for that. Obviously 27001 prepared us for 701 because it is an add-on. And then really that gap assessment, I think was pretty critical for us. I've done that everywhere I've done a first time ISO, just so we're not caught off surprise. I don't like wasting time. Gap assessments really aren't that expensive. And I think the ROI is pretty high. From just like the time savings of, oh, we're doing our stage 1 audit and there's a whole bunch of findings and now we need to scramble, pull engineers off things or pull people off other tasks. And I really try to come at this stuff like really with a business lens. So this is a very long tail, right? We did our SOC 2 gap at the same time. And then a year later, we did the certification, right? So we had a lot of breathing room, a lot of ability to adjust and make changes to the business very methodically versus, all you guys got to change this process that you're really, really used to for many years, and now we got to do it a different way. So I thought that was really beneficial.
The minute you said ROI, I was thinking time, and your next word was time. That really is the give get. And that's one of the benefits of having a mature and being proactive instead of reactive. You get the freedom to have this mock audit and have this gap assessment and say, hey, let's go through the motions one time before we're under the lights. And it will save you time and money in the end by not pulling some of your most valuable resources off the line because now you're under a time crunch. So I love hearing that.
Yep. Yeah, I saw a mention there. I don't know if that chat is seen by everyone about the questionnaires, but the bullet there under SOC 2, again, for anyone that's in a B2B company, our SOC 2 definitely has helped reduce the number of questionnaires. And one of the ways we use our SOC 2 to do that, so the section 2, right, the portion that is written by the auditee, right, I go very, very detailed in that section. I don't talk in high level generalities. I get very specific about controls that we have in place, security vendors that we use, right? Like I don't just say broad statements of, oh, we use EDR everywhere, right? I name the vendor. I name the vendor we use for email security and our annual compliance training. And I found that the more transparent we are in our SOC 2, specifically Section 2, that really alleviates a lot of those questions, right? Because I answer them right up front in the document. And 2, builds I think, a higher level of trust with those customers because I'm willing to talk about it, right? Because you're building security for your customers, not for attackers. So yeah, you could make the argument of, oh, well, you're giving a lot of information away, and yeah, there's a lot of information, but I mean, the probability of someone like going in, signing our NDA, downloading our SOC 2 to then like somehow figure out our internal security, I think is pretty low. So yeah, really trying to put trust first, and I think part of that is you gotta be transparent, right?
Absolutely. You had already mentioned continuous improvement, and one of our core values is innovate constantly, which goes hand in hand. And businesses like yours tend to do this naturally by continuously and proactively improving your security posture through the triaging that you mentioned and finding the pain within your business internally or externally. What is the medium that you're finding these needs? Is this a QBR? Is this a annual board meeting? What is the medium and where you're finding this? Is this an internal weekly call with the sales team? What does that look like for your business?
So the way I get that from customers is actually our customer calls. So again, folks on here, maybe at B2B companies use some type of AI recording software for your sales calls, right? You know, kind of the thing you hear when you call your bank and it says, you know, this call might be monitored or recorded for quality assurance. You know, lots of sales teams use that now for coaching, note taking. The platform we use has this really awesome feature that lets me like keyword security things. So I get a digest once a week of every call that's had some type of security or privacy conversation. And, you know, I can see the text, you know, it transcribes things. So I can go in very, very quickly, look at, you know, 50, 60, 80 calls that happened in 1 week and see exactly what our customers are asking, right? And our prospects, right? So, because you're doing 2 things, right? You're looking at net new business, right? People that have never used your platform, and then ones that are renewing, right? That, you know, I've seen massive uptick. I see it. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but, you know, massive uptick in questions around AI in the last 3 months, right? So as I see those renewals come in, now I can kind of get ahead of like, oh, you know, we're going to start getting a bunch of AI questions. We need to make sure that the team's prepared for that stuff, and maybe, you know, how our existing audits or our existing certifications apply to that stuff and alleviate concerns. So yeah, that's really the primary source for me. And then obviously just like kind of staying abreast of new certifications, new audits that are coming out. You know, I get a digest from when new stuff comes out, or, you know, following NIST when they come out with new frameworks. So yeah, just trying to keep a pulse on external stuff, but really paying attention, like close attention to what our customers are asking and asking for.
I couldn't agree more. AI seems to be making its way into our lives personally and professionally. And I think a lot for the better. Having the ability to read and have it listen to the call and transcribe and not have to listen to 4 hours of sales calls and quickly understand what the sales team is facing without having those one-to-one interactions. You could have 1 to 10, 1 to 40 in an hour's time. That's a game changer for leadership like yourself. My question, and you already alluded to it, is what are you preparing for next? Is this an artificial intelligence, a privacy standard concern? Are you planning for a federal push where you're concerned with CMMC, or is it an international standard? What is next on the docket that you're seeing maybe 3-6 months from now?
Definitely AI. That is the number one new question we get from both new prospects and existing customers alike. And that's all the way from, are we using AI in our product? How is it being used? Are we using AI in the enterprise, right? Are we using vendors that are using AI, right? Going, thinking about now throwing supply chain in it. So I've seen a big uptick in those kind of TPRM platforms that now I think just have like a button you can click and add 400 new AI questions to your questionnaire. And I think we're always going to see that, right? Like I feel like I've seen this movie before. If you remember when S3 launched, right, from AWS, like I feel like I'm hearing all the very similar questions and concerns and worries, like, oh wait, our data's going to be where? Like it's not a colo, it's not like an actual server in a rack. Someone can turn it off and pull out the hard drive. So I think technology is moving really fast. We just all need to kind of catch up and realize I think we've solved a lot of these problems already before, right? Like thinking about supply chain, thinking about TPRM. I think we can reuse a lot of what we've already learned over the 15 years of migrating to the cloud. Because I don't hear anyone concerned about, using any SaaS software nowadays. Right now, it's more specific stuff like AI, right? And I think the worries will come and go very quickly.
I couldn't agree more, and it's amazing how pervasive artificial intelligence, whether it be on your phone or Alexa in your kitchen or at your work with call recording or on Teams messaging or Outlook, how it's already here. It's part of your daily life at work and at home. And it's interesting that you mentioned, the AI management. ISO 42001 has just came out, and it's becoming very popular to manage artificial intelligence management systems. And then you described a little bit of the roles. Are you producing it and selling it to the market, or are you using it, or are you both? Does your business use an AI solution as part of the day-to-day, or is it producing it and selling that to the market? So 42001 does have those role descriptions. And then you also mentioned the supply chain aspect. ISO seems to have a solution for every concern a business may have, whether that be IT or environmental. They've also got business continuity management with ISO 22301. So it's great to hear that these are already on your radar and seem to be a part of your plan.
Yeah, I think watching, we're probably not going to be first to move, right? To go get some certification. There's going to be need to be like really a strong indicator from the market that's something we need to pursue. As we look at building that stuff either into the product. I think like just about every company under the sun, everyone's using some type of AI in their like normal day-to-day work. As a CISO that's also responsible for IT, I use, your ChatGPT, your Claudes or whatever, which are, a game changer when it comes to simple things like writing Excel formulas, right? And, working with data sets and something as simple as that. Obviously, I'm, far years removed from being, a security engineer and pen tester. So like being able to like get back into scripting and write things very quickly where it would, probably take me a full day to figure out, I just want to write this small Python script to do X, Y, and Z. Certainly use that in my day-to-day. I've heard mixed reviews on things like writing emails or like cold emails to people. I know there's a lot of platforms popping up to do that. That'll be, I think, something interesting to see. But how many people are going to want to spend, $50,000 on a piece of software with a chat bot, right? Like, I think, there'll be a barometer somewhere in there where people's comfort level, be like, I'd rather talk to a person to, have this sales discussion. So yeah, I see it all over the place. And I think it's a efficiency thing. So I'm really excited for all the stuff, especially that's happening on the cybersecurity side with AI.
I love that sensitivity barometer comment. This industry specifically, it's either full one way or full the other up. I have to speak to a human, or I want to speak to no humans.
Right.
It's one or the other. So I love that comment. Well, I'm very happy that we have a bunch of questions in our Q&A. So Chris and I are going to stick around and walk through all of those. I did want to thank everybody for coming to our webinar and coming to our monthly compliance corner. We have these every month. Wish everybody a happy holidays, and we'll see you again in December. We are going to stick around for a Q&A. I also wanted to invite you to download our compliance benchmark report. This was like a one-to-one benchmark report, understanding where Chris proactively and reactively adjusts his business and plans for the future. We took the same concepts across our entire client base and aggregated those answers in our benchmark report so that the readers of the report could understand how our customers are planning, what they're concerned with, what are the ISO 42001s in their business that they're concerned with. So we're going to stick around. We're going to do some Q&A and go through the questions that the group has. Thank you for all the questions that we've had, and thank you everybody for joining. All right, so I'll tee you up here, Chris. I think the first one's in your wheelhouse pretty good. I'm going to do the one with the most upvotes. It's about overlap between SOC 2 and ISO. First question is, would you recommend doing them both at the same time? And what is the overlap? Did you experience a lot? Did you experience a little?
So if you're going from zero, right, you have nothing at the moment, I'd say SOC 2 is the good first step. And probably I would pick 3 of the trust principles at a maximum. I don't know. I'd recommend totally going for all 5. Most people don't select process and privacy just as it adds a lot. Really dependent on your business and who your customers are. So that's going to play into that decision. Again, if you're starting from zero, it might not be that much additional work if you're doing them at the same time, especially if you have an auditor that can do them both. Because if you're using 2 different firms, right, like you're going to be doubling a lot of work. So if you're using the same firm, probably not too much additional work. Again, if you're starting from zero, you're going to be writing a lot of policies, making sure you get a lot of technical controls in place. So I can give you our starting point. When we started that journey using Ascend, we had like 56% of the evidence overlapping with ISO, with only what we had submitted for SOC 2. So it was a pretty substantial overlap in the controls and what was asked for in ISO.
Perfect. And a lot of these questions are compounding, which is great. I'm going to go to the next one that makes a little bit of sense going on that first one is, did you give consideration to adding 2717? And I'll preface this for the group as well, for all those that are listening. 27001 has 2 variants, 2717 and 2718. 2717, the question is for cloud services. Did you make a consideration around that one, or did you review that one?
I have looked at that one. We just have not been asked for it before. I felt SOC 2 and ISO, with the evidence we provide, covered enough of that. And since I am also part of our procurement process, so I'm the one reviewing our vendors, I don't see that one as often as I do, SOC 2, ISO. Those are really the bulk. So again, could be more something maybe I'd look at in a competitive situation. right? Where maybe I'm the market leader, maybe I'm the number two, and I want to be, an edge ahead of our competitor. They don't have 2717, we do, something in that scenario. But at least at Crossbeam, I felt SOC 2 and our existing ISO standards covered our cloud environment pretty well.
Perfect. The next question, I'm going to ask you to keep me honest on this one. This question is, given that ISO and SOC 2 have different approaches to achieving a similar objective, is it possible that these two frameworks could one day become unified into a single system? I believe that ISO will maintain its ground and the AICPA its ground as well, with SOC and ISO and the litany of standards that ISO represents, and the mass amount of ground that the AICPA represents even outside of SOC 2 with Sarbanes-Oxley and SOC 404 and SOC 1 and SOC 3. I do feel strongly that this is why A-LIGN has been successful in the market, is that we are trying to do exactly that. We are trying to take multiple frameworks and put them into a single consistent stream of not only evidence request, but evidence audit and conversation. I don't want to barrage Chris or his team, specifically engineers, with redundant questions. That is one very easy way to make clients upset.
Yeah, I can't see a world where they merge, right? I mean, those are two very big, different organizations. I mean, maybe it would be beneficial for us as the consumers of these standards. But I think, with what you just said there, A-LIGN bridges that gap. So I don't know if it would be hugely beneficial if they became one entity and all the standards were under one. And then how would that affect it going forward? Do they eliminate SOC 2 and 27001? Do they come up with a whole new standard that combines them both? There's also, folks that don't want to get a certification right out of the gate, which, there's a little more to that, where SOC 2 is not a certification, regardless of how many posts I see from companies saying we're SOC 2 certified now on LinkedIn. I think there's benefits to having both. So yeah, that would be an interesting day to see one acquire the other, or they just merge. But yeah, I don't see that happen in our careers.
Yeah, the other question I commonly get is, hey, Scott, you talked about a lot of security audits. Which one can I just do one and covers them all? And the answer is none. As you touch different markets, those regulatory factors, those states, those agencies, those industries will force you into different security requirements and security audits. A lot of questions around security questionnaires. So pretty consistent. I think there's 4 or 5 all stating, hey, this audit eliminates security questionnaires, or the security questionnaire still asks me other stuff after explaining we have this audit. Is this also your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% in the same boat there. It gets close to zero. It's not zero. Something that's still very, very confusing to me after doing this coming up on 25 years, is, we said as an industry, we ask people, do you have a SOC 2? It's like, oh, you don't have a SOC 2, okay, well, I don't know if we can use you as a vendor, but then that isn't sufficient. Right, like we've asked you to spend all this money to get this audit and have this done every year. You have a competent, qualified auditor that goes through the evidence. Like, I mean, we've asked everyone to do this, but then we don't accept it as a qualification, right? So that's a little confusing to me. But on the questionnaire side, it definitely has reduced it. It doesn't get to zero. Something we also have, we have a really robust trust center security.crossbeam.com. Anyone can get, it's publicly available. You can go look at it. We host all of our documentation there. That's again helped. One, like, gets me out of having to send people our SOC 2, right? Like, anyone can just go request it, download it, you accept the NDA, super easy. Gets a sales team out of having to like send it or make sure they have the latest one. Because I've been in organizations where they were sending out a SOC 2 that was 3 years old and had exceptions on it that were, not valid anymore. So yeah, the trust centers really help drive that down hand in hand with our SOC 2 and our ISO audits. It's not zero. You're still going to come across organizations where like that they're just kind of immovable. But that is something like really you got to be hand in hand with your sales team and making sure they're enabled, making sure your terms for your product are written in a way that that's part of it as well. So there's a lot of different factors to reduce that. It's not it's like security in itself, right? Like you don't just buy an EDR and you're done for the day. There's all these other tools and layers. I look at compliance the same way, right? SOC 2 is just one of many layers to having a really tight program.
Yeah, and that one of the questions that's reoccurring is, I just did SOC 2. What should I focus on next?
That's going to depend on your business, right? If you're processing credit cards, you probably should have some level of PCI. If you're dealing with health data, maybe high trust or something like that. All depends on the type of business you're running, the data you have, the customers you sell to. If you only sell to federal customers, maybe you have FedRAMP or that's on the table. There's FISMA if you're building cryptographic technology for the government. So yeah, it really depends on the organization, right, and what it is you're selling at the end of the day. So that's something like I know I really like about A-LIGN, because obviously they live and breathe this. I'm not reading audit standards every single waking day of my workday. So it is really nice to be able to get advice from them, like, hey, what's coming down the pipe? Hey, we're looking at this industry. Is there an audit, a framework we should look at, right? Even like specific companies, right? Another thing that was really attractive about A-LIGN was, you all are a partner in Microsoft's SSPA program, which is like their like vendor onboarding. They've got a whole standard that you have to meet and be audited against. So again, like really like kind of asking your auditor, like, hey, what should I be looking at, right? Because they're the experts, not me, right? I've run a lot of audits, but I'm not going to say I'm as versed as someone at A-LIGN.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. Honestly, you have to align it to the industry, and you talked about it earlier, kind of triaging the pain internally now, and maybe where the business is going. Are we going to Europe next? Are we going to the EMEA region? Are we going to APAC, which is a completely different set of concerns? Are we going into Latin America? How's that going to play? And then industry as well. Is it healthcare? Is it finance? Each has a specific tie to a given standard, and they stick to it like clockwork. What do you think is going to be popular in 25? What do you think's the next thing that's going, probably 20 years ago, SOC 2, SSA 16, SAS 70, and then it migrated, but now called SOC 2. But, what do you think it's next year?
I really think it's going to be a heavy push on frameworks and audits and certifications around AI and its use. There's so many components of it, right? Like we talked about, just general supply chain earlier, right? Are using Chat GTP in your regular day-to-day business, right? Well, how are you ensuring like our data is not going into that, right? Most of it's browser based. Things like, are you building an LLM into your product? How are you segmenting my data from your other customers' data? I expect there to be people asking very soon. if you've got some type of audit, maybe I'd be surprised to not see AICPA possibly add a trust principle to SOC 2. I don't know how that process works, how they would add something to that standard, but yeah, that would not surprise me in the least bit to see AICPA come up with something, whether it's in addition to a totally new audit and framework that maybe you add on to SOC 2. But yeah, I'm fully expecting that. just based on the questions, the raw questions I get from customers the last 6 months.
I agree. The AICPA does seem to be quite nimble with, they transitioned from trust service principles to trust service criteria. They created SOC for cybersecurity. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they've already identified concern areas or new structures for artificial intelligence, business continuity. ISO does have some frameworks. I see a lot of logistics businesses or data center manufacturing type businesses where business continuity is vital. So they have a 22301 certification. And then, yeah, I agree. 42001 for artificial intelligence next year. Any of those playing in the federal space, I see as well. CMMC going to be coming on the roadmap. December 15th, it's becoming mandatory for those that manage any controlled unclassified information. And it used to be a self-assessment. Now it's a certification program. So that one's going to come in waves. Well, I think we got two more. So this is, how do I tell the C-suite what certs we need? And maybe I'll preface it with, so at A-LIGN, our CISO every once in a while, and I'll say on a quarterly and an annual basis, he'll come to the sales team, he'll come to different business leaders and department leaders and say, have we lost revenue? Have we lost traction in the market by not having something? Have you been asked for something where you told them no, and what was the impact of the business? And it sounds like with your triaging, you were doing something similar when you entered at Crossbeam.
Yeah, that at the end of the day, if you're a for-profit business, money talks. So if there's a way to draw a very direct line back to like, hey, we don't have a good defensible answer for this question we keep getting asked from prospects and customers. We need to achieve this certification, this audit, this framework standard. That's probably the easiest one to get budget. If there was no compliance budget, let's say it's a net new line item from security or compliance, depending how your organization is structured. Yeah, certainly if customers are asking for it, that's probably easiest path forward. Second, like very, very close behind that, obviously, if there's a regulatory thing, right? Think PCI, high trust, those types of highly regulated data. And then I'd say behind that would be then kind of continuous improvement of your cybersecurity program, right? Like, yeah, we've applied all these best practices. Maybe we don't have a full internal compliance team or something like that where we're, self-assessing, self-auditing, bringing in that external third party, even if it's once a year does have value because they're going to start asking all the questions, right? They're going to go through all the controls, not just like, oh, I logged into this tool and yep, looks like everyone's got MFA turned on and for their, Google login or something like that, right? It's really going to go top to bottom, and that does a couple different things, right? Like gives people a little self assurance that the program's working, right? We've got a third party that's not beholden to us. They have no opinion of us and our business. They're just following the standard. We're doing it or we're not. So that helps kind of, I think, show the value of all the spending and work you do in cybersecurity, to have third party say, yeah, you're doing great, and maybe there's a couple little areas that were missed, right? I find that also is helpful for budget planning, right? Like, oh, we had a bunch of gaps here. Like, these are the things I've been talking about. Like, we do actually need to spend money here. An audit can actually help with that as well, kind of carrot and stick scenario, right? Because now it is documented, it is written down, especially if you're a public company, right? A lot of SEC reporting requirements nowadays. So now you're documenting things. You know about a problem, you got to do something about it. So I'd say those are the top three, right?
Perfect. No, I couldn't agree more. And the last question, your timeline on adding ISO, how did that play against the SOC 2? And then how did it affect your policies and procedures? Did those get commingled? Did they become more robust and satisfy both? Did you have standalone documents that were just for your ISO 27001?
The document side, we merge them all together. Each one solves both. ISO definitely asked for a lot more. So there, things like, wants an objective section on each document, right? So little things like that. Having text-based revision history, right? Not just going by the document history in G Drive or OneDrive or whatever you use for your documents. So little changes like that. The biggest change for us was on the engineering side and just kind of how we checked in code. There was a little more process we had to implement. Very small learning curve, but very easy, like one-click change for engineers. So it wasn't this big, like, oh, we've added 30% more time to getting something from staging to production or something like that, right? Like very, being a startup, you need to be able to move very quickly. So a lot of care into those types of changes. But I'd say those were the two main ones for us: was documentation, making sure we aligned with ISO, just adding all that stuff into what existed, creating stuff that didn't exist, and then just some small engineering process changes.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate the feedback from the questions. I appreciate the questions from the group and everyone that attended today. And thank you, Chris, for joining and sharing some of your expertise and insights in the market.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to. This was great. A lot of really good questions too. I'm glad I'm not alone in the same problems.
Yes. We all share each other's pain.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.